Hi, my name's Andy Whitmore and welcome to my studio, Greystoke Studios. A record producer is the person who takes the song for the artist from its embryo stage right through to a releasable master. This includes going through with the artist, picking the song, working the melody with the chords, having a look at the arrangement, getting the arrangement so that it's a commercial pop edit, around about 3.5, 4 minutes, and then the track needs to be mixed, mastered, and then it's ready for release. Record producers come in many shapes and forms. You get the type like Quincy Jones, who is basically a director, and he employs everyone to do everything, which is fine if you've got a big budget to do the production. And then you get other producers that can play some instruments or all the instruments, and they do nearly everything themselves, and bring in experts for particular jobs which they can't do to the absolute finished standard. Generally, when you're doing a production, you'll need a keyboard player on or a guitarist to kind of work the chords. It's important to work the chords with the artist. Then, once the chords are sorted out, then we move on to production, which is building the tapestry of the song. There are many ways to start a production. The way I tend to start is starting with the music. I will start by playing some keyboards. I'll work with the vocalist and try a few keyboard ideas down. I think it's important to have a great vibe in the studio, so I'll often be working with a drum programmer or an engineer or co-producer. Often the writer will have written chords, and sometimes they're very good and sometimes they're not. If they are very good, normally I'll start with their chords, play them straight, that's good. Then I'll play them different inversions, and then I'll try a completely different set of chords working with the melody. And we just work until we get a lovely chord sequence which really brings out the melody. The next thing we need to do is get a groove going. That's where the drum programmer comes in. Then lay down a guide vocal, and then I can lay down the chords that work with the guide vocal and get a bit of a vibe going. The next job will be to record bass, get a nice bass. We've got a mini Moog over here which we'll have a look at later, which is one of the best bass synths in the world. Lay down some keyboards. We can use either Fender Rhodes, or we can use MIDI keyboards or the virtual keyboards. When I'm working on a production to begin with, it's always good to use virtual keyboards because sometimes you need to change the key or change the tempo, and that's easy to do when everything's virtual. Then we'll be getting a nice tapestry going, a nice structure going, and then we can start working a bit more on vocals. Now, obviously, doing the backing track, that can take a day, 2 days, can take even longer. At the end of the day one, to have a nice backing track going and a nice guide vocal down, then let the artist take the track away, get used to it, learn his vocals well, and then maybe initially spend 1 or 2 days on the backing track, then come back, and then we'll spend a day on vocals, get down some nice lead vocals, some nice backing vocals. Some vocalists do their own backing vocals, other vocalists don't. If they don't, we can still layer up just the lead vocal 2 or 3 times on the chorus, just to make it a little bit bigger than the verses and the bridge, so that even in the demo state, the song feels like it's building. Then we bring in a backing vocalist. They can do backing vocals, they can do harmonies. Come back to the production, build the production sounding nice and tight and happening and current. Yeah, so that's midway. This is how we begin a production. So when we come to the mixing process, this is a little bit more complicated. What we tend to do is work down here, get fantastic rough mixes going, which gets everyone excited, gets the artists excited, and gets the pluggers and record companies excited that are working on it. Once we have a rough mix that's completely ready, then I'll bring in a top mixing engineer. They may either mix down here or they might mix at their own place. It's important to use mixing engineers that have mixed hits before, then we know that we're not taking any chances with the artist's career. Once the track's mixed, we listen to it, the artist listens to it, and I listen to it, and we give the mixing engineer comments, and we work on it until the track's absolutely finished. Then we'll take the track over to mastering, where it'll be mastered. The mastering company I use, they've got 2 or 3 songs in the top 20 all the time, so it makes your record sound like a record. I was a well-known established keyboard player before I got into record production, and as a result I can do most things on keyboard. So worst case scenario, I can start production right from the beginning, right to the end without using anybody else. If I use a session guitarist or session drummer or session trumpet player, they need to be on the same level as me, a top session player. Using session musicians depends on the style of music you're doing and the budget. If you're doing indie type music, rock music, I think it's important to use a real drummer. And if you're doing urban music and dance music, sometimes it's better just to use programmed drums. Programmed drums do sound fantastic. They have all the frequencies that you need to rock a club or to sound great on the radio. And sometimes that's quite hard to achieve when you're using live drums. The way around that when you use live drums is to use a top drummer and to have it recorded really well. And we do have a thing called drum replacement, which is where you literally take the signal of the bass drum and replace it with a perfect sample if need be. Guitarists are great to come down on sessions because they can bring in a different inversion of the way all the chords are played. Guitar's a very organic instrument and it brings in lovely tones and textures to production. I like to work with a vocal producer, somebody who's a good singer themselves, knows about harmonies, and someone that I can bounce with, because I'm always there when we're recording vocals and working on backing vocals. I've got a lot of vocal ideas and I tend to bounce off the vocal producer, and then the vocalist will be involved as well, and between the three of us we get a lovely vibe going and get a professional vocal sound. I generally spend a couple of weeks on a production spread over a period of 3 or 4 weeks. It's important to spend the time on the production, but it's also important to take breaks away from the production. I consider making a song like making wine. It needs to mature, and if you work on a track every day and don't take any breaks, sometimes you can get a little bit too close to it, and if you take a few days off you get a little bit of objectivity. I like to work on a track, then not listen to it, and then come back to it maybe 4 days later, then have a listen to it fresh, and then I can listen to it as a punter does rather than as someone who's in the industry. Listen to it as a whole rather than listen to all the dissected parts. If you're a successful record producer with hits in the charts, then you don't need to be able to play a musical instrument to be a record producer. If you can afford to pay £500 for a keyboard player to come down and sit with you all day if you need, and then start the production, get it all going, and then having them available so that if the artist says he doesn't like a chord change or something and he's right there ready just to change it, if you've got that sort of budget, you don't need to be able to play an instrument. If you want to survive long term in this business, because this business is full of ups and downs, then it's definitely a help if you can play instruments. That way you can always communicate with the artist, you never feel out of your depth, because if the artist wants to talk music with you, you're there, you can understand what they're talking about and you can communicate with them, you can get inside their head and you can develop their ideas.